Now we have to ask, why are black students being removed from the classroom and at such alarming rates? Well, the research suggests two main reasons. One, willful defiance, and two, the unlimited discretion of principals and sometimes administrators. We'll explore this a little bit more later. But let's keep going. Most schools hold their discipline policies and practices and codes of conduct. Willful defiance is one of the several broad categories of school disciplinary offenses, which permits a high level of subjectivity, which greatly contributes to the disproportionate treatment of children from traditionally marginalized groups. Generally, half of school disciplinary sanctions issued to students of color are for willful defiance, a term commonly used for disobeying a school authority figure. The willful defiance category is where explicit and implicit biases are most prevalent and harmful to students of color. Okay, so here's where it starts to get a little spicy. The concept of implicit bias is a science-based concept and suggests that individuals do not always have conscious, intentional control over the processes of social perception, impression formation, and judgment that motivates their action. And without getting too deep into the implicit bias weeds, the research found three themes regarding implicit bias concerning race. One, biases and stereotypes operate regardless of whether an individual has an explicit intent to do so. Two, stereotyping is automatically triggered by normal cognitive processes. And three, people have limited control over their cognitive processes. This study is groundbreaking because it helps illuminate that stereotypes and racial attitudes are not only implicit but also involuntary. Thus, individuals that possess implicit racial biases towards certain groups of people are unintentionally allowing those biases to influence their decision making. Now, I'm not shooting any racist any bail. I'm just letting you know what the research says. When applying implicit biases to actual discipline practices, we see how important a role principals as well as admins and teachers play as a source and the perpetuation of disproportionate discipline practices. We expect our schools' principals to apply their discretionary power in a non-biased and equitable manner. However, we just learned that is pretty much impossible unless it's explicitly addressed. As an example, the aforementioned research article details that studies conducted on school discipline reveal that boys are more likely to receive harsher disciplinary sanction than girls because they are viewed as having a higher propensity for aggressive behavior. And I don't want to be that guy, but the same article reads that, quote, legal scholars assert that abuses of discretionary power by school administrators is the leading cause of the disproportionate representation of minorities in school disciplinary practices. Okay, so we said all of that to say that we think it's important to understand that there are two areas that can be immediately addressed to remedy these educational injustices. So what does any of this info have to do with Galveston, Texas and its school district? Well, we just reviewed the national rates of discipline, and Galveston is not immune from whatever it is that's plaguing the rest of the country's schools. The effects of removing a student from the classroom are many, and each is devastating. According to the Hogg Foundation for Mental Health, a guide to understanding mental health systems and services in Texas, when a student is put out of the classroom's learning environment, students miss common daily experiences that are vital to their childhood development. It increases the likelihood of lowered academic performances, dropping out of school, antisocial behavior, and of course the increased likelihood of entering the criminal justice system. And regarding their mental health, we know that young children that are expelled or suspended are 10 times more likely to drop out of high school, experience academic failure and grade retention, hold negative attitudes regarding school, and they will face incarceration more than students that aren't removed from the classroom. And just a point of emphasis, students of color with disabilities are hurt by these practices the most.